Welcome to the first video of 2025. This video is about Skeleton Crew. I'm recording this video in both English and Spanish. I'm Danny Ramblings. I'm really excited.
Está muy emocionado.
There are tons of movies and series coming out that I've been waiting for a long time, like the second and final season of Andor Tron Ares, and, well, a lot of more artistic content. Last night, I just watched the movie Nosferatu, and honestly, I think we could talk a lot about it, but let's not get distracted. The one I consider to be one of the most dignified Star Wars series in a long time. Here's your spoiler alert.
What is that?
We're talking about episode 6, an episode full of character development and symbolism, which for me already positions its director, Bryce Dallas Howard, as one of the veterans and best TV directors in Star Wars content in the last few years, ever since this type of content has existed. That is, for almost 6 years now. Titled Again Without Friends, in this chapter, we're going to get an exploration and development of characters like we haven't seen in previous episodes. To be fair, being both critical and constructive, I think this type of episode should have come in the first half of the season, not this late. But having it now suggests that the last 2 episodes, which will be the climax and the conclusion of this season, are going to be great. I think the kids continue to evolve, and it was a very smart move to change the dynamics they had been working with. That is, we always had the kids and the girls paired up, Wim and Neil on one side and Fern and KB on the other. The fact that these relationships got mixed up allows us to get to know the characters better. On one side, we have Wim and KB, and on the other, Fern and Neil. This change lets the characters face new challenges, understand more about their surroundings, and also build bonds with unlikely allies. I think the message of the episode is clear. Appearances can be deceiving, and everyone has more depth than they initially seem to have. I think the reinforcement of friendship is powerful, simple, and adorned with music that makes us feel both that childhood innocence and this growth, this character development. On the other hand, we have Jod Na Nawood being put on trial by the pirates, and I think it's the best performance Jude Law has given so far in Skeleton Crew.
Red sword away, away, aboard the Onix Cynder, and never was he seen again.
The little song definitely reminded me that song that started at World's End. Many critics of this series have said that it's not interesting to see the conflict through the eyes of children in Star Wars, because Star Wars, well, George Lucas insisted it was for kids, but it always presented a more adult view of the world. But that's not necessarily true. If we think about it, these kids who must be around 11 to 13 years old are actually much closer to Luke Skywalker and young Anakin from episode 1 than, for example, 17-year-old Luke and Leia were to other characters. I think the title refers to Jod, to how, once again, he's left without allies and nobody really trusts him. They just hope to use him to achieve their own goals. Jod has become that rogue who, despite everything, is still likable. I think deep down what his character is really looking for is to stop being lost, to find a purpose. He believes that through the treasure he'll achieve that purpose, but I think we're going to see a redemption arc. I'm convinced of it. In the last 2 episodes, this character is clearly based on Long John Silver from Treasure Island. He's the Captain Silvo with even more names now. In this episode, we definitely see some evolution. Pirates have dreams too. I found it very interesting, this detail about the Quarren pirate who mentions that he wanted to set up an algae farm on an ocean world, which is consistent in universe. But it also shows that these pirates are similar to the ones who existed in our own world. People who were fleeing the system, who had no place to belong, and who sought to make their own lives. Yes, through misdeeds, crimes, and attacking those within the system. But this dream of freedom and redemption feels very romantic to me. That little line from Wim about how the New Republic are supposed to be the good guys and how hard it is for him to tell who's good and who has bad intentions is very, very powerful. He's a kid. He shouldn't have to face these philosophical dilemmas. But even so, he does. The series shows how even children have to grow to come out of their shells. There's a beautiful visual metaphor with the Onix Cynder. I mean, that's what I find so valuable about this series at this moment. A friend of mine pointed out that scene where Wim helps KB replace the microfuse in his cybernetic implants. It might seem a bit illogical that Wim manages to create that micro fuse with scraps of cables. He places it in the sand in a kind of mold formed by the broken piece, and it cools down very quickly, and somehow he doesn't burn his hands when he grabs the metal. The only thing I can say about that is that, well, throughout the series, this episode and the Star Wars in general, we've always been asked to respect the principle of suspension of disbelief. I mean, we're in space, there are lightsabers, blasters, aliens, everyone speaks the same basic language and they all understand each other. These are the kind of considerations we have to accept to get into the story and connect emotionally. However, when a piece of content like this asks for that suspension of disbelief but fails to deliver good characters or a plot supported by clear goals and opposing forces, that is drama, something well crafted, it becomes difficult to allow it to disregard logic. Not the physical logic of the world we know, but I think here we could argue that the metal they use to make that microfuse is one that cools and heats very quickly. I can't help but think of Gandalf and the One Ring when he hands it to Frodo. It's the kind of thing that, if done right, everything else should work fine. Though I can understand that some people might find it illogical.
It's quite cool.
I was already liking KB as a character. She feels sensitive, very interesting, and built with subtle, simple elements that are very well placed, both in the performance and the character design, as well as in the way she interacts. It was already clear that there was a lot more to her backstory. I mean, it's clear now in this episode that she's someone who had an accident, someone who is vulnerable, who is not on equal footing with the others, and who frequently, although she helps solve problems with her enhanced abilities, is also more vulnerable to conditions that don't affect the other kids.
I have a business proposition. You don't have the resources to protect the Outer Rim, and I need work.
I think, as a theory, there's a very strong potential that in the next 2 episodes we'll get a significant cameo. I mean, one of the main reasons why The Mandalorian Season 3 was so bad is that it had the objective of setting up all these new series that were coming, both what's related to Ahsoka and now Skeleton Crew.
Yes.
Mando and Grogu, the last time we saw them in that 3rd season, practically placed themselves at the service of the New Republic as freelancers. I think it's very likely that not only will the X-Wings that arrived on Lanupa intercept the new and rejuvenated Onix Cynder with the kids' crew, but they'll also possibly run into Mando and Grogu. The climax of this story is likely to be the confrontation of all the factions that want the treasure of Atin, the parents who are back on Atin, for whom the treasure is their kids and getting them back. The pirates who want this seemingly endless reserve of credits, the supervisor and the system protecting Atin, which may or may not be connected to the Empire, and it's almost certain that we'll also see the New Republic getting involved in this multifaceted conflict. Star Wars is already warming up its engines, I think, to give a good shake to the narrative that will come in the next 5 or 6 years. They're already posting a bunch of videos on their social media about Andor, preparing us for what the 2nd season will bring. As far as I know, they are deep into the filming of the Mando and Grogu movie, which will premiere in about 16 or 17 months. I definitely think Skeleton Crew is going to finish strong, and it's very likely that even if we don't get a 2nd season, we'll see these characters contributing, just like Guardians of the Galaxy contributed to the Avengers in Marvel. In other words, this Skeleton Crew team, along with Jod Na Nawood, will surely have connections with The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and other stories in the timeline of the Mandalorian verse, which began in 2019 with its 1st season. Big things are coming. Oh, by the way, that little crab reminded me of the one from Moana.
I just love free food.
And also the crabs from Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Skeleton Crew definitely feels like a mix of Stranger Things, The Goonies, and Pirates of the Caribbean in the Star Wars universe. I'd love it if you could leave me a comment with any suggestions you think this content needs to better meet your expectations. I also want to invite you to check out the channel. I'll be adding more videos translated into English using this AI tool, so if you speak that language, you can have easier access to the channel's content in your language. That way we can keep building this community. I'm Danny Ramblings. See you soon.